So today we're going to read about the structure of human brain. So before knowing about the structure of human brain, we need to know that the human brain, it's the part of the central nervous system. Now, central nervous system is one of the parts of the nervous system, and we need to know what is the nervous system first. So basically, there are various organ systems in the body which are functioning. These functions are regulated, controlled and coordinated for proper functioning by a system called nervous system. And this nervous system has three parts: the central, the peripheral and the autonomic nervous system. And the central nervous system is the biggest part and the most important one as well, among which the brain and the spinal cord are the important parts. So we'll read about the structure of the human brain. So before knowing about the internal structure of the human brain, let's know what it's covered with. So the brain is a specialized delicate organ which is about 1.2 to 1.4 kg in weight, and it is protected by a bony case known as cranium. Now it is composed, basically the brain is composed of the soft nervous tissues. Now these soft nervous tissues, which are the main component of the brain, it is covered by three layers together known as meninges. It means if this is the cranium, then there are three layers. Now these three layers are fibrous and they are known as meninges, and below which the brain lies. So these three layers meninges are, so they are the outer dura mater, the middle one arachnoid mater, and the inner one is called pia mater. Now basically we do not need to write in detail about this, just a glance about it. The dura mater is the outermost covering, the arachnoid mater is the covering beneath the dura mater, and pia mater is the innermost covering, and these both are separated by a space called subdural space. These both are separated by a space called subarachnoid space, and this subarachnoid space, it is filled with a fluid called CSF. CSF is known as the cerebrospinal fluid, which basically acts as a cushion and shock absorber. It also provides a medium for exchange of food materials. It keeps the brain moist. It maintains the uniform pressure of the brain, and it also makes the brain weightless. All these functions are of CSF, and this is an important question. So this is all about the outer structure. Now we'll go for the main inner structure of the brain, which will be asked. These things are not necessary to write. Still, if you want to write, you can. So basically the human brain, it is divided into three parts: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the last one is hindbrain. Now all these parts have a special name, scientific name, which is very important to remember. This is forebrain, so it is known as pro. So it is prosencephalon. This is middle one, so it is known as mesen, and then cephalon. And this is hindbrain, so it is known as rhombencephalon. Now, these names are very important to remember in the context of marks especially. So first we'll be reading over the forebrain. So forebrain is further divided into three parts, which are known as the olfactory lobes, the cerebrum, and the diencephalon. Midbrain is further divided into two parts, which are known as the corpora quadrigemina and crura cerebri. I'll be teaching about each part in detail. And hindbrain is divided into cerebellum, the pons varoli, and the medulla oblongata. Usually all these parts, midbrain and the hindbrain together, are known as the brain stem. So we'll be reading about each part in detail. So first let's go about the olfactory lobe. When it is asked to write about the structure of the brain, usually we see that about the olfactory lobe, it is not written in most of the books. Still, it is a short topic and it's better to write about it, just 2-3 lines about it. So first of all, when we'll write the human brain is divided into three parts: the forebrain, and the forebrain is further divided into olfactory lobe, cerebrum, and diencephalon. So we'll be writing about 2-3 lines about each of these. So first we'll be writing about the olfactory lobes. So see, olfactory lobes, it is the anterior part of the forebrain, and it is formed of a short club-shaped structure. It is the anterior part of the forebrain, means if you see the structure of the brain, this is the ventral view of the brain. It means if the brain is somewhat like this, we are seeing it in the ventral view. So this is the ventral view of the brain, and olfactory lobes are only seen in the ventral view. It cannot be seen in the dorsal view because it lies in the inner surface of the brain. It is fully covered by the cerebral hemisphere from the posterior view. So in ventral view, when we see it, this part is called the olfactory lobe, and it is in the anterior region of the brain, so it is known as the anterior part of the forebrain. Okay, we'll be writing point wise, and it is divided into two parts. There are olfactory bulb, and another one is olfactory tract. Now we do not write too much about it. It's just olfactory bulb and olfactory tract. Basically, when we see the structure, this part is known as the olfactory bulb, and this is known as the olfactory tract. Usually olfactory tract, it is the nerves which are supplying the impulses to the olfactory bulb, and olfactory bulb is a place where it is concerned with the sense of smell. So this olfactory lobe is a part which is concerned with the sense of smell. Okay, and if you see the book, there is one line called, it consists of a cavity known as the rhinocele. Now one thing, this line is completely controversial, we can say, because in most of the books it is not, there is no mentioning about the rhinocele, and when we write about the ventricles of the brain, we only write about the four ventricles, which are the two lateral ventricles, one diastole and one metastole. We do not write about this rhinocele, so it's better not to write this line anywhere. Okay, so I cut this line. So this is all about the olfactory lobe, and this will be enough about the olfactory lobe. And then we go for the biggest part of the brain, which is known as the cerebrum. It is the most complex and the largest part of the brain. So in second number we have the cerebrum, which is the largest and the most complex part of brain. Now we have to describe about this structure. So basically, when we see the cerebrum, it is divided by a longitudinal fissure into right and left cerebral hemisphere. Now what is a fissure? Fissure means somewhat like a depression, or somewhat like a dividing space. Like if we see the brain, if this is the structure of the brain, then here in between there is a fissure, which is a slight kind of depression, which divides the brain into left and right cerebral hemispheres, and these both hemispheres are known as cerebral hemispheres. So it is divided by a longitudinal fissure into right and left cerebral hemispheres. Now both the cerebral hemispheres, it is interiorly, it is joined by a thick band of nerve fibers. Interiorly it is joined somewhat like this, with a thick band of nerve fibers, which is known as the corpus callosum. Now you need to remember the names, and it is very important part for remembering the medical terminologies. So both the cerebral hemispheres are joined interiorly by a thick band of nerves, which is known as the corpus callosum. Okay, and then when we cut the brain like this laterally, so when we see the mid sagittal section, it is known as, it means that the brain, it is cut laterally in this way. Okay, if this is the brain, it is cut in this way, and when we see the brain, this structure is found, and this structure, this folded structure, it is known as the corpus callosum. It is connecting both the cerebral hemispheres actually. So this anterior part of the cerebral hemisphere, it is known as the genu. Of this corpus callosum, it is known as the genu, and the posterior part of this corpus callosum is known as the splenum, and both the genu and splenum are joined together by a fornix. So basically, if this is the corpus callosum, then this anterior part, it is known as the genu, and this posterior part, it is known as the splenium, and both of them are joined together in this way, and this is known as the fornix. While writing about this, we will write that the anterior folded part of the corpus callosum is known as the genu, and the posterior curved part is known as the splenium. Both the parts are joined together by a fornix. This will be our next point. And then the brain, it's outerly, this is all about the internal structure. It means internally it is joined by the corpus callosum, but externally it means that the outer layer of the cerebrum, it is known as the cerebral cortex. If we see the brain in this way from the outer view, now this whole structure is known as the cerebral cortex. Okay, all the area or surface which is exposed to us when we see a human brain, that is known as cerebral cortex. When we see the cerebral cortex, we see that there are numerous means there are numerous convolutions means folded structures. It means that when we see the brain, we see that there are numerous folds, somewhat like this. When we draw the brain as well, we draw these folds. Okay, these convolutions, actually they are to increase the surface area of the brain. Now the ridges of these convolutions, for example, if we take a convolution or folded part, for example, if this is the brain, then there are certain folded parts, so we'll enlarge this folded part. If this is the folded part of the brain, then these both ridges, means these both outer part, the ridges are known as the gyri, and this depression between them, it is known as the sulci, or we can call it sulcus in singular, and it is known as gyrus in singular. Okay, so this is about the convolutions or folded structures of the brain. So usually sulcus or sulci actually, for this it is a term for the depression, and gyri, it is a term for the ridges. Okay, so wherever we'll use the term sulci or sulcus, we'll be defining about a depression of the brain. Now these areas, they increase the surface area of the brain, because see, if the brain was plain, the surface area would be somewhat like this, but if it is folded, its surface area goes down to this and again down to here. So in this way it is increasing the surface area of the brain, and it helps the brain to govern all the mental activities at a single place. Okay, we do not need to go in that detail, just we have to write some of the points like these points. While writing about this, we'll just write the ridges of the brain. The cortex has some numerous fold like convolutions, and the ridges of these convolutions are known as gyri, and the depressions between them are known as sulcus. And usually this will be enough, but if you want to write more, you can write about the lobes of the brain. I'll teach what are the lobes of the brain. See, basically the brain is divided into 4 lobes. They are the frontal, the parietal, the temporal, and the occipital lobe. So the frontal, when we make a structure of the brain, we'll see, this is the structure of the brain. So this anterior part is known as the frontal lobe, and the most backward part is known as the occipital lobe. Between the frontal and the occipital lies the parietal lobe. Okay, the parietal, and this temporal lobe is shown here, but actually it is lying beneath the brain in the ventral view of the brain. It means that we cannot see the temporal lobe in the dorsal view of the brain. So this anterior part of the brain is known as the anterior part of the brain is known as the frontal, and this part, the wrist part here, it is known as this wrist part here, it is known as the occipital, the backward part. Between the frontal and the occipital lies the parietal, and beneath the parietal, it means this part it will be called as the temporal lobe. So basically these are the 4 lobes of the brain, and the areas of concern of the brain like sensory area, motor area, these are divided according to these lobes. For example, in frontal lobe lies the speech area, the motor area, in parietal lies the sensory area, in temporal lies the auditory area, and in occipital lies the visual area. Now we don't make this table in the examination, just I'm telling you about it. So when we need to write about the cerebrum, this much will be enough, and it's all till now I have taught you. Okay, so these four brain lobes, but all these lobes, they are separated by one another by some sulcus. Again, sulcus means depressions. All these lobes are divided from one another with the help of sulcus. So basically the frontal and the parietal, they are separated by a sulcus called central sulcus. So this is known as the central sulcus, which is divided in the parietal and the frontal. Then comes the lateral sulcus. See, the lateral sulcus, it means that it will divide the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe. It means that the temporal lobe is down here and frontal lobe is in front of this. So these both are divided by a lobe called lateral sulcus. If you make the brain, like I'm making a diagrammatic figure, this, if this is the frontal lobe and here downwards lies the temporal lobe, so these both are divided by a sulcus. This is the sulcus, this will be the sulcus, and this sulcus will be known as the lateral sulcus. Here will be the parietal, and this both are divided by a sulcus called central sulcus. And finally the occipital and the parietal, they both are divided by a sulcus called parieto-occipital sulcus. Okay, now these sulcus divide the lobes of the brain, and the sulcus can also be known as fissure. Fissure and sulcus both are same terms, similar terms actually. The fissure also divides the brain. It means fissure is also a depression which is dividing the two areas of the brain, and sulcus is also a depression which divides the two areas. So basically cerebrum, this is all about the cerebrum, and you need to remember terminologies. If you read this chapter twice or thrice, you will remember all the terminologies. And one more thing last about the cerebrum, it has a ventricle. Okay, ventricle means a cavity. So the first ventricle of the brain, it lies in the cerebrum, and its ventricle is known as lateral ventricle. Okay, now each cerebral hemisphere has a cavity, and this cavity, it is known as the lateral ventricle. Now this cavity is the first ventricle. Basically brain has four ventricles. Now this cavity is filled with CSF, okay, cerebrospinal fluid. So both the cerebral hemispheres has a cavity, and so there are two lateral ventricles in the cerebrum. These are known as the first and the second ventricles. Okay, now the function of the cerebrum, it's we know the function of the cerebrum. It is the main center that governs all the mental and conscious activities such as intelligence, the memory, the feelings, the emotions, and also it is a site for the voluntary acts, like if you want to move the muscle, then the motor areas and the sensory areas are present in the brain. And one more thing, it also acts for many reflex actions such as weeping, laughing, micturition, and defecation, etc. All these are concerned by cerebrum. We are reading since our junior classes. Okay, this is all about the cerebrum, and we need to write only about the cerebrum in slightly much detail. And then comes the diencephalon, the third part of the forebrain. Okay, now diencephalon, it lies just below the corpus callosum. It means when we see the brain, the mid sagittal section of the brain, if this is the corpus callosum, then below this corpus callosum, these folded structures, if you see, these are basically the diencephalon. These folded structures below the corpus callosum, this is the corpus callosum which divides the two cerebral hemispheres, and then below it lies the diencephalon above the midbrain. This is the midbrain. Okay, pons paraliana, the midbrain here, corpora quadrigemina. Above the midbrain lies the diencephalon, these folded structures. So diencephalon is further divided into three parts. They are epithalamus, they are thalamus, and the third one is hypothalamus. Okay, so we'll be describing about each of this, just 2-3 lines about each of the part. first of all, epithalamus. Now there is a way to remember about each of this. We'll be remembering each of these parts contains which of the main organs or glands. It means that the epithalamus, it consists of the pineal body and the anterior choroid plexus. If you remember in this way, it will be much easier. Choroid plexus. The thalamus, it consists of the optic chiasma, and the hypothalamus, it consists of the pituitary gland. I'll be teaching about each of this. So see, first of all, epithalamus. So basically epithalamus is this part. If you make the structure of the brain, you will be seeing this part is known as the epithalamus. So this folded part, this anterior part, means this part, it is known as the anterior choroid plexus. So that folded part is known as the anterior choroid plexus. Now basically anterior choroid plexus is a part where CSF is produced. The choroid plexus is the part where CSF is produced. There are two choroid plexus in brain, anterior and posterior. The posterior choroid plexus, it is present in the medulla oblongata of the rhombencephalon, but the anterior choroid plexus, it is present in epithalamus. So that folded part, which is highly vascular, it is known as anterior choroid plexus. Okay, now just behind the anterior choroid plexus there lies a stalk. Just behind the anterior choroid plexus there lies a stalk. This stalk is known as pineal stalk, and above which a body is lying, this round body, which is known as the pineal body. Okay, so just behind the anterior choroid plexus lies a stalk which is known as pineal stalk, and the pineal stalk has a body called the pineal body. Now the function of the pineal body is that it produces a hormone melatonin. Okay, now this is all about the epithalamus. Just 2-3 lines about the epithalamus and that's enough. And then we'll go for the thalamus. Now thalamus is a part which consists of the optic chiasma. Now basically what is optic chiasma? See, if these are the eyes, then the optic nerves come from the eye. Okay, these are the optic nerves coming from the eye, and from this eye optic nerves. Now one thing about the brain, it is not about this chapter, it is about the psychology. See, when we see the functioning of the brain, if we coordinate the functioning of the brain with a machine, then we have discovered one thing, that if we move our right hand, then the left part of our brain will be activated, and when we move our left hand, the right part of our brain will be activated. It means that the left and right parts of the brain, they concern the opposite parts of our body. It means that the right part concerns the left part of the body, and the left part of the brain, it concerns the right parts of the body. It means that the optic nerves which are coming from the left part of the body, it will go towards the right part of the brain, and the right eyes, the right optic nerves, it will go to the left part of the brain. Okay, so in this way they go in this way somehow, and the point where they meet with each other, that is known as optic chiasma. Okay, chiasma means the point of meeting. Now thalamus is a part of the brain where both the parts, optic chiasma, are formed by the crossing of the optic nerves. In figure if we see, then this will be the optic chiasma. It means that if the optic nerves are coming from this direction and optic nerves are coming from that direction, and when they both meet at a certain point, it forms the optic chiasma, and that is known as the thalamus of the brain. It is lying just below the corpus callosum, and so it is a part of the diencephalon. And then comes the hypothalamus, the last one. Now hypothalamus, it is named because of pituitary gland. Basically pituitary gland was known as the hypophysis in the early books, hypophysis. So hypo is a term for pituitary gland, so it is termed as hypothalamus because it consists of pituitary gland. So this hypophysis, it consists of a hypophysis. It means it consists of a pituitary gland which is attached by a stalk called infundibulum. Okay, the pituitary gland, it is a small rounded body which is attached with a stalk called infundibulum. So if we see the structure of the brain, see this is the pituitary gland, okay, and it is attached by a short stalk, and this stalk is known as the infundibulum. Now just behind the infundibulum there is a pair of small rounded nipple like bodies, okay, which are known as the mammillary bodies. See, just behind the infundibulum, this is the infundibulum. Just behind it there are two nipple like bodies, and these bodies are known as mammillary bodies. Now basically we know the function of the pituitary gland. It is endocrine in function, endocrine gland which secretes many hormones which controls the functions of the other glands. Now the function of the mammillary body, the basic function of the mammillary body is that it is also concerned with the olfactory reflexes. It means that the smell reflexes, the mammillary body, it is a relay center for the olfactory fibers. It means that the olfactory fibers which are coming from the olfactory lobes, they meet here. All the olfactory fibers from the olfactory lobes, they meet here, and it also acts as a concern for smell. So if you see the ventral view of the brain, all these structures are somehow like this. This is the olfactory lobe, this is the olfactory tract, and see, these both, just behind the olfactory tract, these both are the optic nerves which are crossing each other, okay, and forming an optic chiasma out here. And just below the optic chiasma, as we see here, just below the optic chiasma lies the pituitary gland. So just below the optic chiasma is lying the pituitary gland. This is a ventral view, so it is below it, the pituitary gland, and it is attached by a short stalk called infundibulum. Now below the infundibulum there are two mammillary bodies, okay, and these are all about the midbrain and the hindbrain, which we'll be talking about. So this is the basic structure of the diencephalon, and that's all about the forebrain. So we do not need to write about it in detail, just 2-3 lines about each of which. Now the last one thing about the ventricle. Now this diencephalon also consists of a ventricle, and that ventricle is known as the third ventricle. Now the third ventricle is also known as the diocele. Okay, so if we see the diagrammatic view, this will be a lateral ventricle which is present in both the cerebral hemispheres, and below these lateral ventricles lies the third ventricle or diocele. So this lateral ventricle, it is formed by the cerebral hemisphere, and if we see the structure of diencephalon, it is somehow like this. Here it is, the epithalamus is here, the hypothalamus is here, and the thalamus is here. It means optic chiasma. And then here lies the hypophysis or the pituitary body, and here lies the pineal body. And so in between them is a space which is known as the third ventricle or diocele. And one thing, these both ventricles, the diocele and the lateral ventricle, they are connected by, these both are connected by a membrane, okay, and that membrane is known as foramen of Monro. So both the ventricles, the lateral ventricle and the third ventricle, they are connected by a separate foramen of Monro. It means that, see, if this is the diocele, this is the third ventricle, and lateral ventricle present in both the cerebral hemispheres, then they are connected with one fiber which is known as foramen of Monro. And this is all about the forebrain, okay. So we have to write in short about it, not in much detail about this, just 2-3 lines about each of it, and that will be enough. And then we go for the midbrain. Now midbrain and hindbrain are short topics, and it is very easy also. So see, then we go for the midbrain, which is known as the mesencephalon. So basically midbrain is a brain, it is a part that connects the forebrain with the hindbrain. It is present between the hindbrain and the forebrain, and the work of midbrain is connecting them both, and it has two parts. They are corpora quadrigemina and crura cerebri. So basically corpora quadrigemina, there are two rounded lobes. If we see the view, then these both rounded lobes, they are known as the corpora quadrigemina. The two rounded lobes, the first pair of the rounded lobe, this first pair of the rounded lobe, it is known as the superior colliculi, and the inferior part of the rounded lobe, it means second pair of the rounded lobe is known as the inferior colliculi. The superior part is concerned with the vision, and the inferior part is concerned with the hearing, and this is the thalamus. Thalamus means the optic chiasma. Now if we see the diagrammatic view, the mid sagittal section, where does this lie? So see, if this is the optic chiasma out here, this is the optic chiasma, we are seeing that it is lying just behind the optic chiasma. So we see from this side, Okay, from this side we are seeing, when we see from this side, this is the optic chiasma, and just below the optic chiasma there is the colliculi. It means that there is the corpora quadrigemina. See, the colliculi is lying here. So this is the optic chiasma, and behind the optic chiasma lies the colliculi. Okay, and these colliculi, they are just concerned with vision, and they are just concerned with the hearing. So if we write about the corpora quadrigemina, we'll just write 2-3 lines like, there are two pair of rounded lobes called corpora quadrigemina. The first pair is known as the superior colliculi, concerned with vision, and the second pair is known as the inferior colliculi, concerned with the hearing. And then we'll go for the crura cerebri. Now crura cerebri, there is another name for it. It will be easier for you. It is known as cerebral peduncles. Okay, now these are basically the fibers, two bundles of fibers that are connecting the hindbrain and the forebrain. Now these fibers are present here behind the colliculi. If you see this figure, these fibers which are connecting the cerebellum, this is the hindbrain, okay, cerebellum. So these fibers which are connecting the forebrain and the hindbrain, these are known as the crura cerebri. So the work of this crura cerebri is just that it relays the impulses back and forth between the cerebellum and the cerebrum. Okay, so this is all about the midbrain, and it's over about the midbrain. Easy. Now just the last part, which is known as the hindbrain. So hindbrain, which is also known as the rhombencephalon, it consists of the cerebellum, consists of the pons varoli, and it consists of the medulla oblongata. So first of all, we'll be dealing about the cerebellum. So cerebellum, it is the second largest part, and it is also known as the little brain. Now this cerebellum, it lies in the posterior region of the brain. If we see the figure of the brain, then this part is known as the cerebellum, which is lying in the posterior region of the brain. Basically cerebellum, it is partially divided into 3 lobes, just partially divided into 3 lobes. Now the 2 lateral lobes are known as cerebellar hemispheres, and one part which is like a worm, it is known as vermis. It means if we see the figure of the cerebellum, it is somewhat like this. It is partially divided into 3 lobes. This middle part, which is like a worm, it is known as vermis, and these two parts, these two lateral lobes, they are known as the cerebellar hemispheres. Now these cerebellar hemispheres, they are made up of the gray matter, and the vermis, it is made of the white matter. Now what is the gray matter and what is the white matter? So basically gray matter and white matter, it is concerned with the neurons. If you see the neuron, the collection of the cell bodies, it means the part which is consisting of the cell bodies, the dendrites, the synapses means the point where the cell body meets with the boutons of this, okay, that's synapses. It means the part which consists of the cell body, it is known as the gray matter, and the part which consists of the axon, that is known as the white matter. In brain, the gray matter, it is situated on the surface, and white matter is situated deeply. Now what it means by saying that the 2 lateral lobes, cerebellar hemisphere, is made of the gray matter, it means that the cell bodies of the neurons, they are lying here, but all the axons of those cell bodies, they are lying in this part. It means if this part is the cell body and this part is the axon, this long part is the axon, then these cell bodies are lying in the cerebellar hemispheres, and the axons, they are all lying in the vermis part. So it is made up of white matter and it is made up of gray matter. Okay, writing this much about the cerebellum, it will be enough. Still, if you want to go deep inside it, then this outer cerebellar cortex or cerebellar hemisphere, it is folded, and you can see the folded parts, and whenever it is folded, it forms convolutions, and the depressions of these convolutions are known as sulcus. It means that the outer cerebral cortex, it is folded to form sulcus, and this about this arbor vitae, it is not necessary. Okay, still I'll tell that this internally, the cerebellar hemisphere, it has a branching like white matter. If you see the figure, it has a branching. Okay, this branching is known as arbor vitae. This branching is a white matter. It means that this branching is of the axons of the neurons. So it is made up of white matter and it is surrounded by a sheath of gray matter. That's all, but it's not necessary, it will be just confusing. So just write about this hemispheres. And one more thing, which is the most important thing about this, it has a ventricle which is known as the fourth ventricle, and the fourth ventricle is also known as the metacell. Okay, now this fourth ventricle, it is connected with the third ventricle with an aqueduct of sylvus. All the ventricles are connected with each other. Now it is connected with the third ventricle with the aqueduct of sylvus. In the figure, if we see, then see, this is the lateral ventricle, this is the third ventricle, and this is the fourth ventricle. Now this fourth ventricle, it goes continuously and forms the central canal of the spinal cord. Okay, so this fourth ventricle, it is connected with this third ventricle with a fiber which is known as the aqueduct of sylvius, and these are the four ventricles of the brain, and all these ventricles are filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Now the function of the cerebellum, it conducts and coordinates the movement, equilibrium, and controls the posture, which is the basic function of cerebellum, to maintain the equilibrium of the body. It means to control the posture of the body, and it also controls some of the reflex actions of skeletal muscles. Now that's all about the cerebellum. Then we'll go for the pons varoli. So basically, when we deal about the pons varoli, we are not dealing about a particular organ or particular part, we are dealing about the fibers. Pons varoli are actually a network of fibers which are connecting the two halves of the brain. It lies in front of the cerebellum. See, in the figure, if we see, this is the cerebellum, and in front of the cerebellum lies the pons varoli. Below the pons varoli is the medulla oblongata. This part is the medulla oblongata. So this, in the figure we draw dotted structures, but actually these dotted structures represent the fibers. Now basically what happens is that this pons varoli, it connects the medulla oblongata with the midbrain. Midbrain is this, it means that it consists of hypophysis and all. This part is midbrain. Okay, so these are the fibers which are connecting the midbrain with the medulla oblongata, and also this pons varoli, it acts like a bridge to connect both the cerebellar hemispheres. It means that the two parts of the cerebellum, they are connected with each other with a band of fibers. It means that if this is the cerebellum, this is the one part, another part is here. Okay, that part is cut when we cut the mid sagittal section. Now this pons varoli, it connects this part with the another cerebellar hemisphere. It means it is connecting both the cerebellar hemispheres and also the midbrain with this medulla oblongata like a bridge. And this pons varoli, it is basically the fibers which are made up of white matter. It means that it is made up of the axons of the neurons. The whole brain is made up of neurons, but this pons varoli is made up of the white matter of the axons. Now the function is basic. With the structure, it's matching that it relays impulses between the medulla oblongata to the superior parts of the brain. It means to the midbrain, to the forebrain. Okay, that's all about the pons varoli. And the last one is medulla oblongata. Now there is not much to tell about the medulla oblongata. It just lies below the pons varoli and it is continuous with the spinal cord. It means that this is the pons varoli and this is the medulla oblongata. It is continuous with the spinal cord. It goes on and continues with the spinal cord, and it consists of white matter. It means it also consists of the axons, and one more thing, that it consists of the posterior choroid plexus. I told you about the anterior choroid plexus. Now it consists of the posterior choroid plexus. See, this is the medulla oblongata, and here it consists of the posterior choroid plexus. The posterior part of this medulla oblongata, it forms the posterior choroid plexus. This stem-like structure, that is known as the posterior choroid plexus, and it is also concerned with the formation of CSF. Now that's all about the medulla oblongata, and the functions of the medulla oblongata is also similar to the functions of the cerebellum. It means that it controls the complex activities, reflex actions, and also heart action, respiration, sneezing, coughing, etc., etc. And that's all about the rhombencephalon. Okay, and with this we complete the structure of the human brain. So we not need to write in much detail about this. just short information about each of this. Just remember what these special parts contain. Means each part contains what special thing that we need to remember, and that will be helpful for us for in writing about these structures. If you didn't understand, you can rewind the video and see. And one thing, the figure, if you want to make the figure, this will be the appropriate figure, only one figure. Now if you are having difficulty in remembering this figure, don't make it much complex, don't make it much informative, just make it simple. Just make a figure somehow like this. It's very easy. See, cerebellum is here, cerebrum is here, the midbrain, the pons veruli, and the medulla oblongata, and simply the spinal cord. This will be enough. And as I said, you do not write in detail. You can see in this book as well, it's not written in detail, just few paragraphs about each of it. And one more question, in short question, it is basically asked that which part of the brain causes immediate death if it is injured. Now the answer of it is the brain stem. It means that the midbrain and the hindbrain together. It means that the specific answer will be medulla oblongata, to be precise, medulla oblongata. But the brain stem, immediate death is declared if any injury takes place to this. This is a short question for this. And if you have any queries regarding this chapter, you can comment. Thank you.